Nobody in Carmel, Indiana, ever expected Sarah Elizabeth Morrison to become one of the wealthiest young women in America. Not the girl who worked summer shifts at the local ice cream parlor. Not the cheerful college student who drove a modest Honda Civic. And certainly not the shy 22-year-old who still lived in her childhood bedroom, decorated with faded posters from high school. But on a cold February morning in 2019, everything changed. Sarah sat in the mahogany-paneled conference room of Morrison & Associates, one of the most prestigious law firms in Indianapolis, surrounded by men in expensive suits who looked at her with a mixture of pity and calculation. Her hands trembled as she held the document that had just been placed before her, her grandfather's will. "Miss Morrison," the lead attorney, a silver-haired man named Robert Kellington, spoke with the careful tone of someone delivering news that would alter the course of a life. "As the sole surviving heir of the Morrison family trust, you are now the beneficiary of the entire Morrison pharmaceutical empire. The estimated net worth is approximately $1.3 billion. The words hung in the air like a foreign language. Billion, not million. Billion. Sarah's grandfather, Thomas Harrison Morrison III, had built Morrison Pharmaceuticals from a small family drugstore into a national powerhouse, holding patents on several life-saving medications. He was a titan of industry, a ruthless businessman who believed in efficiency above all else. Sarah barely knew him. He had been a distant, cold figure who appeared at family gatherings like a visiting dignitary, never staying long, never showing warmth. Her parents, David and Catherine Morrison, had died 3 years earlier in what police called a tragic accident, a car crash on a rain-slicked highway. Sarah had been 19, a sophomore at Indiana University, when she got the call that changed her life the first time. Now, at 22, she was receiving another call that would change it again. But this time, it wasn't grief that filled the room. It was opportunity and danger. "There are, of course, certain complexities," Kellington continued, sliding another document across the polished table. "Your grandfather was very specific about the terms of inheritance. You must take an active role in the company. You cannot simply sell your shares or step away. The trust requires you to serve as chairman of the board for a minimum of 5 years, or the entire estate reverts to the Morrison Foundation for Medical Research." Sarah looked up, her brown eyes wide with shock. "But I don't know anything about running a pharmaceutical company. I'm an art history major. I was planning to teach—" "Your grandfather was aware of that," Kellington interrupted smoothly, "which is why he appointed a team of advisors to help you transition into your role. They're waiting to meet you." What Sarah didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that every person in that room had their own plans for the Morrison fortune. The loyal advisors her grandfather had appointed were already calculating how to control the naive young heiress. The board members who would supposedly guide her were secretly meeting to discuss how to sideline her. And somewhere in the shadows of the Morrison empire, someone was already planning to make sure she never lived long enough to claim her full inheritance. The meeting lasted 4 hours. Sarah signed papers she barely understood, nodded at explanations that felt like they were delivered in code, and tried to absorb the reality that her life, as she knew it, was over. Gone were the dreams of a quiet life teaching art history, of the small apartment she'd planned to rent near the university, of the simple future she'd imagined. When she finally emerged from the law office, the late afternoon sun was blinding. Waiting for her was a black Mercedes with tinted windows, her new car apparently, and a driver named Marcus, who introduced himself as her personal security. "Security?" Sarah asked, confused. "Why would I need security?" Marcus, a broad-shouldered man in his 40s with kind eyes and a military bearing, gave her a sad smile. "Miss Morrison, you're now worth over $1 billion. You need security." The drive back to Carmel should have taken 40 minutes, but Marcus took a longer route, explaining that it was protocol to vary their path. Sarah sat in the back seat, staring at her reflection in the tinted window, feeling like she was looking at a stranger. Her phone buzzed constantly, texts from college friends who'd somehow already heard the news, calls from numbers she didn't recognize, and several missed calls from her late father's brother, Uncle Richard Morrison. Richard was the black sheep of the family, a charming man who'd squandered his own inheritance on bad investments and expensive divorces. Sarah barely knew him, but suddenly he seemed very interested in reconnecting. As they pulled up to her family's house, a modest colonial in a quiet neighborhood, Sarah saw them waiting, her Uncle Richard standing on the porch with his wife Veronica, both wearing expressions of concern that didn't quite reach their eyes. Her father's former business partner, James Hartley, sitting in his car across the street. Her best friend from high school, Emma Chen, practically bouncing with excitement on the front lawn. And there, partially hidden by the oak tree in the front yard, was a man Sarah didn't recognize. Tall, well-dressed, probably in his mid-30s, with dark hair and an intense gaze. He was watching the house, watching her. When their eyes met, he didn't look away. He smiled, a slow, calculated smile that made Sarah's skin prickle with unease. Marcus noticed her tension. "That's Mr. Blackwood," he said quietly. "One of your grandfather's advisors. He'll be working closely with you." Something in his tone suggested a warning, but before Sarah could ask, Uncle Richard was at the car door, pulling her into an embrace that felt more possessive than comforting. "Sarah, sweetheart, we've been so worried about you, going through all this alone. It's not right. You need family around you. We're here for you, whatever you need." As Sarah was swept into a whirlwind of greetings and congratulations, she caught one more glimpse of Mr. Blackwood. He was still smiling, still watching, and now he was on his phone, speaking to someone with an expression that was anything but friendly. Sarah Elizabeth Morrison had just inherited a billion-dollar empire. What she didn't know was that she'd also inherited enemies who would kill to take it from her. And in the weeks to come, some of them would do exactly that. The golden cage had just closed around her, and the key was already in someone else's hands. The Morrison Pharmaceuticals headquarters towered over downtown Indianapolis like a glass and steel monument to corporate power. 42 floors of gleaming windows reflected the morning sun as Sarah's Mercedes pulled into the executive parking garage. She'd been the company's official chairman for exactly 5 days, and she still felt like an imposter. "Remember what we discussed," Marcus said as he opened her door. "Don't sign anything without Kellington reviewing it first. Don't make any promises, and don't trust anyone who tells you they were your grandfather's closest friend." Sarah nodded, smoothing down her new Navy Armani suit, one of 12 outfits that had mysteriously appeared in her closet, courtesy of a company stylist she'd never met. Everything in her life now came with quotation marks around it. Her advisors, her security detail, her executive assistant. None of it felt real. The executive elevator required a special key card that Marcus handed her with a meaningful look. "Keep this with you at all times. Don't let anyone else use it. Not family, not friends, no one." When the elevator doors opened on the 42nd floor, Sarah was greeted by a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and an even sharper smile. "Miss Morrison, welcome. I'm Patricia Vance, your executive assistant. We have quite a day ahead of us." The executive suite was intimidating. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, modern art that probably cost more than Sarah's college tuition, and a conference table that could seat 20 people. On that table sat a stack of folders, easily 3 feet high. "Your grandfather's pending projects," Patricia explained, noting Sarah's expression. "The board has prepared briefings on each one. Mr. Blackwood is waiting in conference room A. He's eager to begin your orientation." There was something in the way Patricia said orientation that made Sarah's stomach tighten. But before she could respond, the door opened, and Alexander Blackwood entered. In the daylight of the office, he was even more imposing than he'd been outside her house. Tall, probably 6'2", with dark hair graying slightly at the temples, and eyes that seemed to catalogue everything they saw. He wore a Tom Ford suit that fit him perfectly, and moved with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no. "Miss Morrison," he said, extending his hand. His grip was firm, almost uncomfortably so. "I'm Alexander Blackwood. Your grandfather and I worked together for 15 years. I handled his most sensitive acquisitions." "Sensitive acquisitions," Sarah repeated. Blackwood's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Your grandfather believed that Morrison Pharmaceuticals should be more than just a company. It should be a dynasty. I helped him acquire smaller competitors, secure patents, and eliminate obstacles to growth. I'll do the same for you." The word eliminate hung in the air like a threat. "I should tell you," Blackwood continued, settling into a chair without being invited, "that several board members are not pleased with your grandfather's decision. They believe you're too young, too inexperienced. They're already circulating a petition to invoke Clause 47 of the Trust Agreement." "What's Clause 47? It allows the board to request a competency evaluation if they believe the chairman is unfit to serve. If you fail that evaluation, your inheritance is forfeit." He paused, watching her reaction. "They're planning to call for the vote in 30 days. Sarah felt the room spinning. 30 days? But I just got here. I haven't even— "Which is why you need me," Blackwood interrupted smoothly. "I know where all the bodies are buried, metaphorically speaking. I know which board members can be persuaded and which need to be replaced. I know the secrets your grandfather kept, the deals he made, the leverage he held over his enemies. With my help, you'll not only survive the competency evaluation, you'll crush it. And what do you want in return?" For the first time, Blackwood looked genuinely pleased. "Smart girl. Your grandfather always said you were smarter than you acted." He leaned forward. "I want to be appointed Chief Operating Officer with a 20-year contract and 15% equity stake in the company. In return, I'll make sure you keep your throne." Before Sarah could respond, her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Don't agree to anything. Blackwood was investigated for insider trading in 2016. Case mysteriously dropped." Sarah set her phone down carefully. "I'll need to think about it." Blackwood's expression darkened. "Time is not a luxury you have, Miss Morrison. While you're thinking, your enemies are planning. The board meeting is in 3 hours. They're going to introduce a motion to freeze all major expenditures pending your review period. That means no new hires, no new projects, no changes to executive compensation. They're boxing you in. Then I'll need to convince them otherwise. With respect, Miss Morrison, you don't know the first thing about pharmaceutical economics, patent law, or corporate governance. They'll eat you alive." Sarah stood up, surprised by the steadiness in her own voice. "Then I guess I better learn fast. Thank you for the offer, Mr. Blackwood. I'll be in touch." For a moment, something dangerous flashed across Blackwood's face, something that made Sarah understand why Marcus had warned her about him. Then he smiled, stood, and buttoned his suit jacket with careful precision. "Your grandfather made a lot of enemies, Miss Morrison. Not all of them are outside this building. I hope for your sake that you figure out who your real friends are before it's too late." He paused at the door. "And do be careful. Your parents' accident was very convenient timing, wasn't it? Right before your grandfather's updated his will to include provisions about direct descendants." The implication hit Sarah like ice water. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that your grandfather didn't believe in coincidences. Neither should you." And with that, Blackwood left. Sarah's hands were shaking as she sat down at what was supposed to be her desk. Patricia appeared moments later with coffee and a sympathetic expression that felt rehearsed. "The board meeting starts at 2 p.m., Patricia said gently. "I've prepared briefing materials on each board member. You should know that 6 of the 9 are openly hostile to your chairmanship. 2 are neutral. Only one, Dr. Ellen Zhao, your grandfather's head of R&D, has publicly supported you." Sarah spent the next 2 hours reading through files that made her head spin. Board members with decades of experience, patents worth hundreds of millions, ongoing lawsuits, FDA approvals pending, international expansion projects. It was overwhelming. At 1:45 p.m., Marcus appeared at her door. "We need to go, but first you should see this." He handed her his phone. On the screen was a news article from 3 years ago. "Morrison heir and wife die in mysterious crash. Police suspect brake failure." "I did some digging," Marcus said quietly. "Your parents' car was a 2015 Mercedes. Those models had a recall for brake sensor issues, but your father's car had been serviced just 2 weeks before the accident. The brakes had been replaced. Brand new. So, brand new brakes don't just fail, Miss Morrison. Someone who knew cars, who had access to the vehicle, could have made it look like an accident." He paused. "Your Uncle Richard worked as a mechanic before your grandfather bought his silence with a trust fund. And James Hartley's auto body shop was where your parents had their car serviced." Sarah's blood ran cold. "You think they killed my parents?" "I think your grandfather thought so. 3 days after your parents died, he changed his will. He removed Richard from the inheritance entirely and added provisions that if anything happened to you before you turned 25, the entire estate goes to charity. No family members, no business partners, nobody profits from your death. Except the Morrison Foundation for Medical Research, which is run by a 5-person board appointed by your grandfather. And Alexander Blackwood sits on that board." The pieces were falling into place, forming a picture that terrified Sarah. Her grandfather hadn't given her an inheritance, he'd given her a target on her back. Every person who smiled at her, every advisor who offered help, every family member who suddenly wanted to reconnect, they all had reasons to want her gone. Sarah stood up, straightened her suit, and looked Marcus in the eye. "I need you to do something for me. I need you to find out everything you can about my parents' accident. Police reports, autopsy records, witness statements, everything. And I need you to find out who benefits most if I fail that competency evaluation." Marcus nodded with something like respect in his eyes. "Already on it." As they walked toward the boardroom, Sarah caught her reflection in a window. She looked different, harder, older. The scared 22-year-old who'd sat in Kellington's office was gone. In her place was someone who understood that in her new world, trust was a luxury she couldn't afford. The boardroom doors loomed ahead. Behind them waited 9 people who held her future in their hands, and somewhere among them was someone who'd already killed twice to get what they wanted. Sarah took a deep breath and pushed open the doors. The game had begun. 9 faces turned toward Sarah as she entered the boardroom. The hostility was palpable. 6 board members sat on one side of the table, a united front against her. Dr. Ellen Zhao sat alone on the opposite side, her expression carefully neutral. 2 empty chairs represented the neutral votes. At the head of the table sat Richard Morrison, her uncle. He shouldn't have been there at all. "Uncle Richard?" Sarah's voice was sharper than she intended. "You're not on the board." "No special appointment," he replied smoothly. "Approved this morning by emergency vote, 6-3. Family should have representation, don't you think?" It was a power play. They'd moved faster than she'd anticipated. Sarah took her seat at the opposite end of the table, Marcus standing behind her like a sentinel. The oldest board member, Gerald Hutchinson, cleared his throat. "Miss Morrison, we've called this meeting to discuss Clause 47. Frankly, Your grandfather's decision to bypass experienced leadership in favor of, well, a college student with no business experience puts the entire company at risk. I graduated, Sarah said quietly, last month. Hutchinson's condescending smile made her skin crawl. Congratulations. That changes nothing. We're proposing a 6-month transition period where Mr. Blackwood serves as interim chairman while you undergo intensive training. If you prove competent, you resume your role. If not, the inheritance goes to the foundation, Sarah interrupted, where Mr. Blackwood conveniently serves on the board. How much is he paying you, Mr. Hutchinson? The room went silent. Hutchinson's face flushed red. How dare you? I dare because I've been doing my homework. Sarah opened the folder Marcus had given her. Hutchinson Consulting has received $4.3 million from Morrison Pharmaceuticals over the past 3 years for advisory services. Services that, according to our accounting department, were never actually rendered. That's fraud, Mr. Hutchinson. Dr. Zhao leaned forward, suddenly interested. 2 neutral board members exchanged glances. Richard stood up abruptly. Sarah, you're making serious accusations. Sit down, Uncle Richard, or should I ask why you visited Dad's mechanic shop the day before the brake failure? Sarah's voice was ice. Marcus, show them the security footage. Marcus placed a tablet on the table. The grainy surveillance video showed Richard entering Hartley's auto body, carrying a small bag, staying for 40 minutes, then leaving without the bag. That proves nothing, Richard snarled, but his face had gone pale. It proves enough for a police investigation, Sarah replied, which I'm requesting today. The boardroom exploded into chaos. 3 board members started shouting. Richard backed toward the door. Dr. Zhao was smiling, and then the lights went out. When emergency lighting flickered on seconds later, Richard was gone, and lying on the conference table, exactly where Sarah had been sitting, was a syringe filled with clear liquid. Marcus grabbed Sarah, pulling her back. Don't touch anything. That wasn't a power outage. Someone cut the main line. On the syringe, attached with a small piece of tape, was a note in elegant handwriting. Your grandfather should have known. Morrison blood always spills. The Indianapolis Police Department's forensics team arrived within 20 minutes. Detective Maria Santos, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s, examined the syringe with gloved hands while her team photographed everything. Potassium chloride, she announced after a quick field test. Enough to stop your heart in seconds, leaves almost no trace in autopsy. Looks like natural cardiac arrest. She looked at Sarah with new understanding. Someone knew exactly what they were doing. Sarah sat in her office, still shaking despite the coffee Patricia had brought her. Marcus stood by the window, phone pressed to his ear, coordinating with building security to track Richard's escape route. Dr. Zhao had followed them from the boardroom, her expression grim. Your grandfather died of a heart attack, she said quietly. Sudden cardiac arrest. He was 78, so nobody questioned it. But now... You think he was murdered too? Sarah whispered. I think your entire family has been systematically eliminated. Zhao pulled up a chair. Sarah, there's something you need to know. 3 months before your grandfather died, he asked me to run a private DNA analysis. He gave me samples from your parents' accident, blood from the car. He wanted to verify it was actually them. Sarah's blood ran cold. And it was them. But there was a third DNA profile in that car. Someone else was there when they crashed, or immediately after. Your grandfather was trying to identify who, but he died before the analysis was complete. Marcus ended his call abruptly. Security footage shows Richard didn't leave alone. Someone was waiting for him in the parking garage. Black SUV, tinted windows, no plates. Blackwood, Sarah said. Maybe, but there's something else. Marcus pulled up footage on his tablet. This was taken outside your house last night. Watch the timestamp. The video showed a figure in dark clothing approaching Sarah's childhood home at 3:47 a.m., trying the doors, checking windows. After 5 minutes, they left, but not before looking directly at the security camera and smiling. It was Veronica, Richard's wife. "She wanted you to know she was there," Detective Santos said, studying the footage. "That's a message. You're not safe anywhere." Patricia knocked urgently. "Miss Morrison, I just received this by courier." She handed over a manila envelope marked urgent, personal. Inside were photographs, dozens of them. Sarah as a child, Sarah at college, Sarah at her parents' funeral. Every major moment of her life, documented by someone watching from the shadows, and on the back of each photo, written in the same elegant handwriting as the note on the syringe. "We've been watching, we've been waiting. The Morrison line ends with you." The final photo made Sarah's stomach drop. It was taken that morning, Sarah entering the building, Marcus beside her. But someone had drawn a red X over her face, and in the corner, barely visible, was a timestamp. Today, 8:47 a.m. "That's impossible," Marcus said. "We varied our route. Nobody knew which entrance we'd use." Dr. Zhao's face went white. "Unless someone inside the company told them. Someone who has access to your schedule, your security protocols, your movements." Sarah looked at Patricia, who'd been standing there the entire time. Patricia, who knew everything. Patricia, who'd appeared in her life exactly 5 days ago. "Who hired you?" Sarah asked quietly. Patricia's smile was cold and professional. "Your grandfather did. 6 months before he died, he wanted someone close to you when the time came." "Close to me, or close to whoever wanted me dead?" Before Patricia could answer, the office lights flickered, once, twice, and then went out completely. In the darkness, someone whispered, "Run!" Marcus grabbed Sarah's arm, pulling her toward the emergency exit. Detective Santos drew her weapon, shouting orders into her radio. Dr. Zhao stumbled in the darkness, knocking over Patricia's coffee. And Patricia laughed, not a nervous laugh, a triumphant one. "You should have taken Blackwood's offer," Patricia said, her voice different now, colder, with an accent Sarah couldn't place. "He was trying to save you, unlike the others." Emergency lighting flickered on. Patricia stood blocking the main door, holding a small remote control. "I control every system in this building. Elevators, doors, security cameras. Your grandfather gave me that access. He wanted insurance." "Against what?" Sarah demanded. "Against them!" Patricia pressed a button. On the office screen, video footage appeared. Grainy, old, dated 1996. It showed a younger Thomas Morrison in what looked like a laboratory, standing with 2 other people Sarah didn't recognize. They were injecting something into test subjects who were clearly unconscious. "Your grandfather didn't build Morrison Pharmaceuticals on innovation," Patricia continued. "He built it on stolen research, human experimentation, illegal trials conducted in South American villages. Hundreds died. The survivors—" She paused, her hand trembling slightly. "The survivors had children, children born with genetic damage, children who grew up wanting revenge." Dr. Zhao gasped. "The foundation. That's why he created the foundation. It wasn't charity, it was hush money. Some of us took the money, others wanted justice." Patricia's eyes locked on Sarah. "Your parents discovered the truth. They were going to expose everything, destroy the company, donate the fortune to the victims. So they had to die." "Richard killed them for you," Sarah whispered. "Richard killed them for money. We merely facilitated the opportunity." Patricia smiled. "But you were innocent, a child when it happened. Your grandfather's will was designed to protect you, give you a chance to make it right, to use the Morrison fortune to help the people your family destroyed. And if I don't, then the others get what they want, the company dismantled, the assets seized, and every Morrison dead." Patricia tossed Sarah a flash drive. Everything is on there. Your grandfather's records, the illegal trials, the cover-ups. Take it to the FBI, destroy your own empire, or hide it like he did and spend the rest of your short life running. Detective Santos moved forward. You're confessing to conspiracy to murder. I'm confessing to nothing. Patricia pressed another button. The emergency exit burst open. I'm giving you a choice, Sarah Morrison. Justice or survival. You can't have both. Smoke grenades detonated in the hallway. By the time it cleared, Patricia was gone. Marcus grabbed the flash drive, but Sarah was staring at the frozen video on the screen. One of the people standing next to her grandfather had a distinctive scar on their left hand. She'd seen that scar before. On Alexander Blackwood. Sarah didn't go home that night. Marcus took her to a safe house on the outskirts of Indianapolis, a nondescript ranch house that belonged to his former military unit. Dr. Zhao came with them, along with Detective Santos, who'd officially taken herself off the case but refused to leave Sarah unprotected. The flash drive contained horrors Sarah couldn't unsee. Video after video of human experimentation. Villages in Colombia and Peru, where Morrison Pharmaceuticals had conducted field trials of experimental drugs without consent. Children injected with compounds that cause seizures, paralysis, death. Her grandfather's meticulous notes documenting symptoms, mortality rates, and, most damning, his complete awareness that what he was doing was murder. There are names here, Dr. Zhao said, scrolling through files. 47 researchers who participated. Most are dead now, but 3 are still alive. She paused. Alexander Blackwood, Gerald Hutchinson, and me. Sarah's head snapped up. What? Zhao's face was ashen. I was a graduate student in 1996, 23 years old. Your grandfather recruited me from MIT, told me we were doing groundbreaking work in third world communities. By the time I realized what we were actually doing, I was complicit. He owned me. Her voice broke. I've spent 25 years trying to atone. Every drug I've developed since has been given free to developing nations. Every patent I've held, I've fought to keep affordable. But it doesn't change what I did. Why didn't you expose him? Because he would have destroyed me. And because, Zhao pulled up another file, because he had this. The document showed a wire transfer, $2 million sent to Dr. Ellen Zhao's account in 1998, marked as compensation for services rendered. Blood money, Zhao whispered. I used it to build schools in the villages we destroyed, but legally it makes me complicit. If this comes out, I go to prison too. Marcus was watching the door, his weapon drawn. We need to decide what we're doing with this information. Right now, half of Indianapolis is looking for us. Richard and Veronica are in the wind. Blackwood has disappeared, and whoever Patricia is working for me. They all spun around. Alexander Blackwood stood in the doorway, looking nothing like the polished executive from the boardroom. His suit was rumpled, there was blood on his shirt, and he held a gun with the casual comfort of someone who'd used one before. I hired Patricia 5 years ago, Blackwood continued, stepping into the room. Marcus raised his weapon, but Blackwood shook his head. I'm not here to hurt anyone. I'm here to finish what Thomas Morrison started before he lost his nerve. You were there, Sarah said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. In 1996, you helped him murder those people. I was 28 years old, ambitious, stupid. Your grandfather promised me the world, and I believed him. Blackwood's expression was haunted. I've lived with what we did every day since. The faces of those children. He stopped, composing himself. When your parents discovered the truth, I helped Thomas cover it up. I thought we were protecting the company, protecting jobs, protecting the good work Morrison Pharmaceuticals does now. But your mother looked me in the eye and said, how many lives have to be destroyed before you become the monster you're hiding? So you killed them, Sarah said coldly. No, I tried to stop their deaths. I warned them, told them to run, gave them money to disappear. But Richard got to them first. He sabotaged their breaks for a $5 million payment from Gerald Hutchinson, who stood to become CEO if your father was gone. Blackwood's jaw tightened. Thomas figured it out 3 days later. He changed his will, cut out everyone who might have been involved, and started planning his revenge. By giving everything to me? By giving you the truth. Thomas knew he was dying. The heart condition was real, though I suspect Hutchinson helped it along. He wanted you to have a choice he never gave himself. Expose the crimes and destroy the empire, or bury them and use the fortune to save lives. He couldn't decide which was right. Detective Santos lowered her weapon slightly. Where's Richard now? Dead. Found him an hour ago in a warehouse on the south side. Single gunshot to the head, execution style. Veronica is missing, but her car was parked outside. Keys still in the ignition. Blackwood met Sarah's eyes. Someone is cleaning house, eliminating everyone connected to the original crimes. Patricia, Dr. Zhao breathed. Patricia is Colombian. Her real name is Isabella Vega. Her mother was one of our test subjects in 1996. She survived the trials, but died of complications 5 years later. Isabella has spent her adult life tracking down everyone involved in her mother's death. She infiltrated Morrison Pharmaceuticals 3 years ago using forged credentials that were so perfect even I didn't catch them. Sarah's mind was racing. She said others wanted the company destroyed. A group, Los Justicieros, the Avengers. Blackwood pulled out his phone, showing surveillance photos. 37 people, all children or relatives of victims. They've been planning this for years. Take down Morrison Pharmaceuticals, seize the assets, use the money to fund medical care in the communities we destroyed. Poetic justice. And where do you stand? Sarah asked. Blackwood set his gun on the table, a gesture of surrender. I stand with the truth. I'm tired of running from what I did. Thomas made me promise, before he died, that I'd make sure you had all the facts, not the sanitized version, not the corporate spin, everything, and then let you decide. Sarah picked up the flash drive, feeling its weight. Such a small object to hold so much destruction. If I release this, Morrison Pharmaceuticals collapses. Thousands of employees lose their jobs. Stockholders lose billions. Every drug we produce, including medications that save lives, becomes tainted by scandal. Yes, Blackwood said simply. If I bury it, I become complicit in covering up mass murder. I use blood money to fund my life. I become exactly what my grandfather was. Also, yes. Sarah looked at each person in the room. Marcus, loyal to the end. Dr. Zhao, haunted by her past. Detective Santos, sworn to uphold the law. And Blackwood, a man who'd spent 25 years becoming someone different from the monster he'd been. There's a third option, Sarah said slowly. We don't bury the truth, and we don't release it to destroy everything. We use it as leverage. Blackwood frowned. Leverage for what? To rebuild. The Morrison Foundation currently has an endowment of $400 million, but it's controlled by board members who use it for tax write-offs and publicity. We restructure it. Every board member with connections to the 1996 crimes resigns immediately, including you, Dr. Zhao, or I release the evidence. We increase the foundation's funding to $100 million annually, directed specifically to medical care in Colombia and Peru. We establish a truth and reconciliation process where victims' families can come forward and receive compensation. That's not justice, Santos said quietly. No, but it's more than they've had for 25 years. And it's better than watching the company collapse while lawyers fight over assets for the next decade. Sarah stood, surprised by her own certainty. Morrison Pharmaceuticals continues, but under new leadership. I remain chairman long enough to implement these changes. Then I step down. The company becomes what it should have been, a force for healing, not harm. Isabella and Los Justicieros won't accept that, Blackwood warned. Then I'll meet with them face to face, show them the plan, give them representation on the new foundation board. Sarah's voice was steel now, and if they still want blood, they can have mine. But only mine. No more deaths, no more revenge. It ends with this generation. Dr. Zhao was crying. Your grandfather would be proud and ashamed, both at once. Good. That's exactly how he should feel. Sarah turned to Blackwood. You're going to help me. You're going to use every connection, every secret, every bit of leverage you have to make this happen. And when it's done, you're going to turn yourself into the Department of Justice. Full confession. You'll probably spend 10 years in prison. Blackwood nodded slowly. Acceptable terms. Marcus, I need you to find Isabella. Tell her I want to meet. Neutral ground, her choice of location. Just the two of us. That's non-negotiable. She's been watching me my whole life. She deserves to hear this from me directly. The meeting happened 3 days later in a small church in Carmel, the same church where Sarah's parents had been buried. Isabella Vega sat in the front pew, dressed simply in black, her eyes red from crying. I killed your uncle, she said without preamble when Sarah sat beside her. He deserved worse, but I gave him a quick death. More mercy than he showed your parents. I know. I should kill you too. Morrison blood. You benefit from our suffering. I do, and I can't change that, but I can try to balance the scales. Sarah showed her the restructuring plan, the foundation changes, the compensation framework. Isabella read it in silence. It's not enough, she finally said. Money doesn't bring back the dead. No, nothing does, but it can help the living. Your mother's village, the clinic there closed 5 years ago. We reopen it, we staff it, we make it the best medical facility in the region. We name it after your mother, Elena Vega Medical Center. Isabella's hands trembled. You researched her, you learned her name. I learned all their names, all 127 people who died in the trials, and the 300 who survived but suffered complications. They're not statistics anymore. They're people, and we're going to honor them. For a long moment, Isabella said nothing. Then, my organization won't be satisfied with this. Some want total destruction. Then let them come for me. But leave everyone else alone. Dr. Zhao has spent 25 years trying to make amends. Blackwood is turning himself in. The other researchers are dead or dying. I'm the last Morrison. If blood will satisfy your justice, take mine. But let the healing begin. Isabella stood, looked down at Sarah, and for the first time her expression softened. You're nothing like him. Your grandfather was a monster who convinced himself he was a visionary. You're just a girl trying to fix a broken world. Is that enough? It's a start. Isabella touched Sarah's shoulder briefly. We'll be watching. If you fail, if you become what he was, we'll finish what we started. I understand. 6 months later, Sarah stood in a village in Peru, watching the ribbon-cutting ceremony for the Elena Vega Medical Center. Dr. Zhao was there, having resigned from Morrison Pharmaceuticals to run the Foundation's medical initiatives full-time. Marcus stood nearby, still her shadow, still her protector. Alexander Blackwood was in federal custody, awaiting trial. His testimony had led to indictments against 3 other executives who'd participated in the cover-up. Gerald Hutchinson had died of a heart attack, whether natural or assisted no one could prove, before charges were filed. Morrison Pharmaceutical stock had dropped 40% when news of the restructuring leaked, but slowly it was recovering. Under new leadership, the company was pioneering an open-source drug development model, making medications affordable in developing nations. And Sarah? She'd kept her promise. After implementing the changes, she'd resigned as chairman, transferring her voting shares to a trust controlled by victims' families, medical ethicists, and community representatives. She kept enough money to live comfortably. $50 million felt obscene, but Isabella had insisted she not become a martyr and donated the rest. She was 23 years old. She'd inherited a billion-dollar empire, uncovered mass murder, survived assassination attempts, and dismantled a dynasty built on blood. Now she was just Sarah Morrison, standing in a village her grandfather had nearly destroyed, watching children receive vaccinations that would save their lives. It wasn't redemption. That wasn't possible, but it was something better than revenge. It was a beginning.